Hi, it's Ms. Parrott, and this video is about the basics of the nervous system. The nervous system is a system in your body that allows you to respond to the stimuli in your environment. It does this by sending electrical messages to tell your body what to do. Since these messages only have to travel from one cell to the next, it happens very quickly, and obviously it's a short distance, just from one cell to the very next cell. Your nervous system is broken up into two major parts. The central nervous system, which is made of your brain and your spinal cord, and then your peripheral nervous system, which is made up of all the rest of the nerves in your body. Nerves are made up of chains of nerve cells called neurons. There are two major kinds of neurons that we are going to be looking at today. Sensory neurons, which detect the stimuli in your environment, and motor neurons that tell the rest of your body what to do in order to respond to it. Here you'll see the series of events that happens that allows you to respond to a stimulus in your environment. Here you'll see we begin with a stimulus outside your body receives that message, your central nervous system coordinates what's happening, tells your effector organ what to do, and then when the effector organ does its job, your body has a response. It's a simple process. Let's look at this example. In this example, our little mosquito bites your arm, and that is the stimulus. Receptors on your skin detect the itch, right? So you have 5 senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. So your touch sensors detect the itchiness that's a result of the saliva from the little insect bite. Then sensory neurons are going to take the message up to your brain. So from your arm up to the spinal cord and to your brain. The brain is going to receive the message and figure out what's going on. It's itchy. Well, now what do we do about that? This is when your brain does the next step. This is when it acts as the coordinator. So now that it knows what's happening, it's going to tell your body what to do. So your brain is going to coordinate the response and tell your hand and arm to do what it needs to do to scratch that itch. But how do we get a message from the brain to your hand? Well, we do that through motor neurons. And motor neurons are going to carry the message from the brain to the hand and arm. These are called effectors, or effector organs. Muscles in the effectors, the hand and arm, will respond and scratch the itch just like your brain told it to. There's a unique situation in which the brain does not act as the coordinator. During reflex reactions, like if you're falling and you put your hands down to catch yourself, or if light gets turned on when it's dark and your pupils suddenly shrink, these are reflex actions, and the coordinator in this case is your spinal cord, so that the sensory and motor action only needs to go a short distance before something happens. Let's look closer at how this actually works out. Your body uses a process called signal transmission to send these electrical messages from one cell to the next so that you can respond to a stimulus in your environment. Let's take a look at this top diagram. This is a neuron. These are two motor neurons lined up next to each other as they would in a nerve. This fun part, the larger part, this is called the cell body, and these protrusions that come out of here are called dendrites. Then the neuron has a long skinny portion called the axon, and then at the end of the axons are axon terminals. Terminals like at the end of an airport, there are terminals, or the Terminator will end you. So you can think about axon terminals are at the end of the axon. Then there's a synapse. Synapse is another word just for the space between neurons. And here again are the dendrites of the next neuron, the axon and the axon terminals here. And you can imagine a chain of neurons that continues to go. Now let's take a closer look at what's happening in the synapse. Signal transmission happens in a series of 4 easy steps. First, the electrical impulse is going to move down the axon of one cell, so that's this little lightning will be our electrical impulse, and as it moves down the axon to the axon terminal, it's going to trigger the movement of vesicles. Vesicles are just little bubbles, little membrane bubbles full of neurotransmitters. And neurotransmitters are the chemicals that are actually going to trigger the response in the next cell. But in order to do that, the neurotransmitters have to move to the edge of the axon terminal, and they'll actually excrete the neurotransmitters into the synapse. So these chemicals are just kind of bumping around over here. When the neurotransmitters, see this little green dot right here, attached to the receptor protein on the dendrite of the next cell, this will trigger the action potential, the impulse to begin and start to move down through the cell, the next cell. What's neat is these neurotransmitters don't get used up and they don't get sucked into the next cell. Once they've hit the receptor, they will then be released and will go back up into the cell to be reused again. Some neurotransmitters are broken down by enzymes. Signal transmission is easily affected by drugs and medicine, and this can be good or it can be bad. For instance, some drugs, some illegal drugs, cause your body to produce a lot of neurotransmitters, especially the kind that make you feel good, like dopamine and serotonin. So if your body is making way more neurotransmitters than it should, and you're receiving that like, hey, I feel awesome message, and that's going, if you stop taking that drug, your body's not going to make as much of it, and so you're going to be addicted because you're going to have to take that drug again to get more neurotransmitters in your synapses to make you feel good. But all is not lost. Neurotransmission is also acted on by medicines. There are medicines that are for depression, and one of them is called a serotonin selective reuptake inhibitor. And so serotonin is one of those neurotransmitters that makes you feel nice and have a stabilized mood. And these are reuptake proteins. These are the proteins that your neurotransmitters are going to return to the original cell in. If you have depression, a lot of times part of it is you just don't make enough neurotransmitters. So if your neurotransmitters are in here and are getting eaten up by enzymes, there's not going to be very much triggering of these, hey, feel nice, let's have a stable mood nerve impulses. So there are drugs that actually block these reuptake proteins so that so that your feel-good neurotransmitters stay in the synapse and kind of keep triggering, bing, 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 keep triggering these receptor proteins so that the electrical impulse that tells your body to have a stable, positive mood keeps going. So neurotransmission is very important, and this video has been about how that neurotransmission works, the parts of the nervous system, and how reactions work.